I let my children believe they had won. It started the week the Federal Reserve raised interest rates for the 11th time, October 2023. The news was everywhere. Mortgage costs up, savings accounts finally paying something decent. My son Gerald noticed that last part first. He was always good at noticing other people's money. I had $2.3 million sitting in accounts Gerald didn't know the full details of. My late wife Margaret built that over 40 years. Hardware stores. 4 of them across Ohio. We sold the last one in 2019 for more than we ever dreamed. Gerald knew some of it existed. He didn't know all of it. That was Margaret's rule. Never show the whole hand. Gerald and his wife Sandra started visiting more in the spring. Concerned visits. Worried visits. "Dad, you left the stove on. Dad, you forgot you already called me today. Dad, we think you need more help than we can give you." Most of it was staged. The stove I turned on myself to test what they would do. The repeated phone calls were Sandra calling back after Gerald hung up, pretending to be a second call. I watched them perform and said nothing. They hired a lawyer, a young man named Philip who wore expensive suits and couldn't look me in the eye. He filed paperwork claiming cognitive decline. They had a doctor, Dr. Fenimore, who saw me twice for 15 minutes each time and wrote a report that described a man I didn't recognize. In 2022, a ProPublica investigation found that elder guardianship fraud cost Americans over $36 billion annually. I had read that article 3 times. I went to Sycamore Ridge Memory Care willingly. That surprised them. Gerald actually looked disappointed when I didn't protest. What he didn't know was that I had spent the 2 weeks prior meeting with a different lawyer, a man named Arthur Holloway, who specialized in exactly this kind of case. I signed documents before I walked through those doors. I restructured accounts. I established an irrevocable trust. I had Margaret's brother Frank named as my financial trustee. Gerald had always underestimated Frank because Frank drove an old truck and wore flannel shirts. Frank had been a banking regulator for 30 years. At Sycamore Ridge, I was quiet, cooperative. I attended the group activities. I nodded at the nurses. I read my books. Gerald visited twice a month, always checking, always probing. "Any memory problems, Dad? Mixing up your words?" I gave him nothing. Meanwhile, Arthur was building a case. Dr. Fenimore's license had 2 prior complaints. The lawyer Philip had represented 3 other families in similar petitions. A pattern, Arthur called it. Prosecutors tend to find patterns interesting. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March. Gerald's voice shaking. "Dad, we need to talk about some paperwork." I said, "Gerald, I believe your lawyer is the one who needs to talk to investigators." I moved back into my house the following week. The forsythia was blooming in the front yard, same as it had every spring for 30 years. I stood on the porch and breathed cold air and thought about Margaret, who always said the quietest person in the room has either nothing to say or everything to lose. She never said which one I was. Gerald is working with prosecutors now, cooperating in exchange for reduced charges. Sandra filed for divorce in April. I send a card to my grandchildren every week. I don't blame them for their parents. Someday I'll explain what happened. I'll tell them that their grandfather wasn't confused. He was counting.